please, please, please only invest in landlord-friendly states, right?
Yes.
Yes. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And this is the Investing in Real Estate show, a show where we help you build financial intelligence and build financial freedom. And we do it through buy and hold real estate. So we're going to talk about the power of buying properties, investment properties in landlord-friendly states. And we're going to also use this episode as an update, because many of you have been asking for the update on our nightmare tenant story. Now, that story took place in a state that was not landlord-friendly, right? What state was that?
Right, it was in New Jersey. We were sort of testing out a market that we thought was good because there are some solid jobs in this area. There's some solid growth.
Military base.
Yeah, it's not going to go away. But it's a high tax state, and we don't have the right to evict tenants there without using a lawyer because we own the properties in an LLC, and that does not happen fast. We learned the hard way that really sucks.
So we'll get to that. We'll get to our update on this tenant, because this is a story that's been going on for a little while here on the show. So we'll kind of bring you up to date on that in a moment towards the end of the show.
Okay, but first of all, what is a landlord-friendly state, please?
So a landlord-friendly state, look, when we start to invest at our company at Morris Invest, before we move into a market, we're going to spend 9 months to a year now analyzing what goes into this particular market. But we start at the very basic understanding of it being a landlord-friendly state before we even take the next step. Mm-hmm. So a landlord-friendly state is a state where the government is friendly to me, the owner of said property. That's just the bottom line. Look, these are the laws. You want to play, what tennis court do you want to play on? Do you want to try to invent your own tennis court, or do you want to play on the tennis court of laws that are already set up, right? And that's what we do. So there are certain states that allow for me as an owner to evict a tenant very quickly if that tenant is not paying. Now, someone, other states would argue, well, maybe that's being insensitive. I don't care. I mean, if you are a tenant in my property and stop paying and are trying to take advantage of me, the owner, a person I provided you with housing, I gave you a new property, gave you a great place to live in a great neighborhood, I took care of all of my responsibilities as an owner, and you decide to stop paying, well, look, then you need to find some other lodging. That's just the way I feel about it.
Well, I will say this, though. In the states that are more landlord-friendly where we invest, we are given the choice most of the time. This tenant is behind. Would you like to work on evicting them or give them a chance to catch up? We have always given our tenants a chance to catch up.
Always.
We have never said, no, absolutely red line, start to evict right away. Most of the time, those tenants catch up. I always err on the side of empathy. I understand that sometimes there's too much month at the end of the money. That happens to everyone, right? But it gets to a point where you're like, it's not fair for you to live in this property that I own for free when other people are paying. If I'm going to let you live there for free, I should let everybody live there for free, and I'm not in the business of that, right?
I bought the property, renovated the property, or built a new construction property from the ground up. I pay my property taxes on time. I provided a great place for you to live. You can't pay to live here because of some hardship came up. Great, we'll work with you to get you back on your feet. We worked with a veteran in one of our properties who was had fallen behind, and he was, I think he was in a wheelchair. We worked for a number of months, even though he was behind, to get him caught up, and that was fine. So we're always going to try to work with someone, but if someone starts to take advantage of the landlord, which often happens and can happen, this person's going to play a game where they'll get caught up and make a payment, kind of resets the clock, and then they'll fall behind again on purpose, reset the clock. So anyway, there are certain states that say no bueno, okay? There are certain states like Texas, Tennessee, other Midwest states, Indiana, and places like that are landlord friendly. There are certain states that are not landlord friendly. New York, California, Oregon, New Jersey. Places where it can take a long time to evict a non-paying tenant because of the laws of that particular state.
Also, states where you don't have the right to take certain damages out of a deposit. I think I've spoken many times about my nightmare tenants in California. In San Francisco, this couple, their dog soiled the carpet, and I had to...
it went into the wood.
Like it went all the way past whatever those layers of padding are underneath the carpet. I had to replace the whole carpet. They had put huge holes in the wall, and she knew her rights, that I couldn't charge her for the carpet for whatever reason, but I could charge her for the holes in the wall. And it was like, you can charge me to patch the wall but not repaint it, when they had messed up all of my paint. They had painted over. They were just awful, right? And I couldn't keep a lot of their money to make it right out of their deposit. It was horrid.
And this was an A-class property. This is why we don't invest in A-class properties. It was a condo in downtown San Francisco, HOA fees, all sorts of things, right? So this is an A-class property.
It was right on Harrison Street.
And it also was an A-class tenant, right? And so these A-class tenants who took advantage. But there are also professional tenants. There's a phrase among landlords, professional tenants, who know how to play the game like this. And so there are certain states that don't allow them to play this game. And those are the states we like to invest. There are other reasons that states can be landlord friendly in addition to just the tenant laws, right?
Right. It's not just like we want the opportunity to evict people easily.
No, there's other reasons there are states that are landlord friendly.
Right. There's the tax laws. There's like the way that you deal with certain utilities, right? Like we have this one market where I was confused about a property that we bought, and because I was getting 2 tax bills on the single property, it turns out that the purchase of that property included the vacant lot next door. It's not like so big, it was just a strip of land, but I didn't understand that they taxed them differently, and the deed did not list it as an address. And so I was confused about it, and I was able to get on the phone with the county like that. It was just like as easy as that. Is a little small town. They were super friendly. They understood why I hadn't paid that tax bill because I just didn't understand it. You just want to make, some places are hostile towards out-of-state investors. They sort of treat you like you should not be investing there because you're not one of us. It's just sort of there's a general feel about it as well.
Right. There's also other restrictions on how much you can charge for rent, certain rent control spaces as well. We're seeing that right now in Oregon, and some other states are moving. Look, we have an affordable housing crisis in this country, so I understand certain areas are just way overpriced and people can't afford the rent in certain places. So I get that. But I also have the right to not invest there, right? Because
yes.
I don't want some bureaucracy telling me how much I can charge for rent and what I can do. So I go to states that are favorable for me as an investor. That's the bottom line. And that's why you see so many people moving from these high cost, high tax, high regulatory states like California, New Jersey, New York. They're moving out. They're moving to places like Idaho, Arizona, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee. You see the migration patterns. I mean, when I used to work in the TV business, we used to put up this big screen in the middle of the studio, and we used to show all of the migration patterns because of these higher regulation, high tax states. I mean, it's just a fact of life. But again, no longer am I going to invest in those places, and you should not also. So the number one landlord-friendly state, and where we are doing most of our investing in work and new construction right now, is in the state of Texas. Texas has always been the Lone Star State. It's always been the don't mess with Texas. We're going to go our own way. And even in the most recent election, they passed a further law which would eliminate certain income taxes. So now it's even more favorable for landlords to be there.
Right. We were talking to a couple actually that lived in, I think, Oklahoma, and they said a lot of businessmen, I don't know why I said that, business people, they try and set up residency in Texas for their tax laws because they just, if they meet a certain threshold, even though they live their lives in Oklahoma, they're trying to move their lives more into Texas for this reason.
And Florida for the very same reason.
Right.
A lot of East Coast people will do the Florida thing, maybe more West Coast, middle, heading to Texas. Anyway, so Texas, one of the top landlord-friendly states in the country. So when you're investing, a lot of people think investing in your own backyard is the way to go. You live in California, so you got to invest in California. No. You got to, you live in New Jersey, I should only invest in New Jersey. No. The best properties are not in your backyard. They are often in the most landlord-friendly states. So make sure, like where we're doing most of our work right now at our company, be aware of the landlord-friendly states. Okay, so now we have this update on this. Sort of
not landlord-friendly.
Not landlord-friendly state, a state that we sort of experimented with because we lived there and we bought a package of properties, and we've just had some headaches because this is a non-landlord-friendly state.
Yes. So this tenant was placed by the contractor who did not give her a proper credit check, but he did such a good job on the rehab. And he's like, oh, I'll rehab this and I'll get a tenant in so fast for you. I know the area, I know the neighborhood. And I was like, great. And I was so desperate for a tenant at this point that I made a bad judgment and let him do that. And so about 2 or 3 months into her lease, she stopped paying rent. And it's a duplex. So the woman that shares the wall with her, we're going to call them, I know I've been through this on other podcasts, the like good tenant and bad tenant, for lack of a better word. Although I hate calling anyone completely bad. Okay, I know, I won't go there again.
She's a bad tenant.
She's a bad tenant. I don't know if she's a bad person. So the bad tenant now is not paying rent. The good tenant's been there for years, paying rent, keeps her property clean, never, makes word one of a squeal or a problem for me at all. But the woman next door now is so dirty that the pests and the bugs are starting to creep across the wall into the good tenant's yard and house and refrigerator. They leave trash out in the front. I get violations. Now I'm on a first name basis with the city inspector, who calls me all the time because she's creating violations for me. Well, we started to evict her. Originally, they said, do you want to give her time to catch up or we can start the eviction process? And I gave her time to catch up, which was a mistake, because then the inspector's like, look, this lady is a professional tenant. She knows all the rules. She'll move into a new place and she knows you can't evict her for at least 5 months. It takes that long to get that, maybe 3 months. And so she'll stay there, but then she'll give you her notice, pretend that she's leaving so that you don't go through the eviction process. And then once you realize that you need to evict her, it's already been a year she's living somewhere for free. And that's exactly what she's done to us. So I gave her time to catch up, and then she made a half payment, which sort of stops the clock on the eviction, and then she stopped paying again, so I had to start this all over again, new legal fees, new process. Meanwhile, the woman next door is freaking out because she couldn't even hold Thanksgiving dinner because of the bugs.
And we have tried to get, the exterminator in there, and she refuses to allow us to get the exterminator in there. So we've even had to call the city inspector to let him know, like, look, this is a health problem. She will not let us get in to clean the place, to get in proper bug.
The first time an exterminator went there, they said we couldn't even get in. It was so dirty. I had just rehabbed this. It was beautiful. Brand new floors, brand new painting. Everything was new.
Yeah, and if you watch our videos, I did a whole behind the scenes of the renovation on this particular property. We'll link it here, where it was all completed, all done.
And the exterminator wouldn't even go in. He's like, this is a hazard. So I mean, I can't even imagine how one lives like that, or how in a short amount of time your house can become that way. I don't want to place judgment, but it's so upsetting.
I can judge a person. Are you living in filth? You can't clean up after your food so bugs come up? Like,
I think they mentioned something even about like human feces. Like, there is a working toilet in there. It was a good property.
The whole bathroom was renovated.
Yeah, so anyway, so now we're trying to get in there for the exterminator. She had given us notice 2 months ago saying she was leaving, but she knew that was just, she was doing that to buy herself time. And so we called her and said, the exterminator needs to get in or else the city is going to force their way in. They're calling us. And she said, okay, they can come on Friday, but I'm going to extend my notice. I'm not leaving now, I'm leaving in April. And we're like, no, you're leaving as soon as we get the right to lock you out. So you can say whatever you want. The inspector called me and it was like, don't give her an inch. I'm like, I'm not, but I don't have any more rights to move any faster than how the courts are going to allow.
Non-landlord friendly state. And so having to hire a lawyer in the state of New Jersey to go through this process, she's a professional renter, so she understands the rules, so she can move in and then suddenly stop paying. She knows then that the state's laws will allow her to stay there because it's going to take us a long time to get the lawyer involved, file the paperwork, go through the process, and then as the deadline approaches, she can just leave. Yeah. And now what do we do? This is one of those things that makes me furious and makes me want to say, I would love to sue this woman. She moves into our property, doesn't pay, and then also trashes the property so much so that she thinks she can move on to another property.
But what are we going to get if she can't even pay rent and she doesn't even own trash cans? Like, what would we sue her for, right?
Look, if this stops her from doing this again to somebody else, Because that's what's going to happen. She's going to go off. I don't know how she's going to get away with it, but she's going to do this to somebody else.
Right. And so what was our fault is we didn't get a background check or a credit check, right? Because the contractor was like, oh, this lady, she came up with the money. She
Yeah,
seems
this was
like
an
a nice,
and again, an
right?
experimental process.
That's on us. It's a very expensive mistake that we made.
And we talked about this. This was a huge mistake that we made, and we want to impart that to you. Don't ever make that mistake. Work with reputable property management companies that you vet for a long time to find out if they've been in business for 5 years or more, how many doors do they represent, what type of software do they use, what is their level of communication, what kind of a background check do they do. So again, this is not a market that we would have ever worked with our clients on. This was our sort of test market because it was near to us where we lived. Huge mistake. Now, of these 10 properties that we do own there, 8 of the 10 of them are rented. We have this one problem property, so it's not a total disaster. But I wouldn't do it again. But I would, because this one property is such a pain in our butt, it does feel that way. Because all of our other properties right now are humming along just fine. So this is...
Now, this recent problem where she said, I'm not moving till the end of April, right? And when she says this at the end of January, I get on the phone with my lawyer and I'm like, how close are we to finishing this, this eviction? Because the good tenant calls me all the time, almost in tears. And the lawyer is like, probably not until March.
Ugh.
So that's another month that I have to placate this nice lady next door and say, I'm so sorry you live next to this piggish person. I can't move any faster, and I'm trying. I want to buy her grocery, bills or something because her groceries are going bad. She's like, we're using harsh chemicals. I don't know what my rights are. I'm like, I will figure something out when she leaves. If that nice lady stays, I feel so powerless. It's awful. It's an awful, awful feeling.
Well, we'll figure out something for her, so that we can take care of her.
Yeah.
Because she's had to put up with this woman. And it's not our fault, but anyway. Well, in some ways it is our fault because we didn't get a proper screening of this woman, and so now we have to try to go through this process. So again, partially our fault because we didn't get a proper screening done on this woman the right way. Also, it's partially the state's fault because of how long it takes to get a bad tenant out of there. And these laws are so discouraging for landlords. That's the bottom line. So, and again, only invest in landlord-friendly states. Let us have this be a cautionary tale for you.
Learn from us.
I still believe real estate is the #1 way to build wealth. You just have to cross your T's and dot your I's. We'll see you on the next show, everyone.